Okay, we're going to take off where we left yesterday. You may remember we got up to about slide number 20. So your notes should continue. Don't start new notes. At the conclusion of this presentation, which won't take a lot of time, we're going to have a quiz. And it's going to be based on the notes you took yesterday plus the notes you take this afternoon. So be careful. Pay attention. An open note. It's going to be an open note quiz like always. Okay, Boeing and Airbus. The aircraft designs are very, very similar, as we saw from the pictures that we showed yesterday. It's hard to tell. You can go out to an airport and you can look around, and you'd be hard pressed to be able to see the difference between them. There are subtle differences. Sometimes the differences are in winglets, where one aircraft, Airbus, might have a slightly different shape of a winglet than the other. There are also aerodynamic coverings underneath the wing that cover up the mechanisms for the flaps. And Boeing and Airbus tend to have slight differences in that area. But otherwise, size of the fuselage, length of the wing, the tail, the empennage are all very, very similar. So it's hard to tell one from another. So this is important. The Boeing 787 uses 50% composites. Airbus likes to brag that they have 53% composites in their A350, but what's the problem with the A350? Anybody remember? It's not available yet. It's not flying. But they like to compare it. Osvaldo? What, the A350? If it's available now, it's only the last couple of months, but no. Bigger engines on, bigger wings, that thing. So to my understanding, the A350 is not yet flying today in a commercial airline. It's flying. It's being tested. But unless there's been something come up that I'm not aware of, my understanding currently is it's not flying. All right, so in the cockpit is where the big difference occurs between Airbus and Boeing. The Airbus uses side stick controllers. They're little things that are like little handles, and that actually takes the place of what you would normally see as a control stick. And that's a big from a safety point of view. Before I'm going to refresh your memory in a few minutes. So here's a picture of the inside of an Airbus cockpit, and you can see right here. Or over here you can see it just above his wrist. There's nothing in front. In fact, they have a little table that they can add to the cockpit right in here. He has one right here, and can do whatever. They can write letters home. That might be an exaggeration, but in fact they can sit and study things. They can look at the route of flight. They can look at maps, whatever. As long as that controller is off to the side on the right. The biggest problem that they've had with those controllers is that they don't move together. That the captain's control stick and the first officer's control stick are independent. That caused a crash off the coast of Brazil because they got into turbulence at night over the Atlantic Ocean, just off the coast of Brazil, and at that time they were upset so much that the first officer, who was flying in the right seat, pulled back on his controller, his little side stick control, that meant that whatever happened, he was going to stall it, right? Because remember we talked about before, how do you stall an aircraft? You pull the wheel back. Well, in this case, you pull that stick control all the way back. So now it's pitch dark, right? He's probably in some turbulence. He's got it all the way back thinking that's what he needs to do. The captain was in the washroom. He comes back up to the front of the airplane. He sits down, realizes that the airplane is stalling, so he takes his side stick controller and pushes it forward. Guess what happened to the guy in the right seat? Nothing. So here they are. The captain's pushing his forward. The first officer's pulling his back, and what happened to him? They stalled all the way into the ocean. So it's one of the disadvantages of having side stick controllers are not connected. Yes, Nico? Pardon? Yeah, from 35,000 feet, they stalled all the way into the ocean. Zachary? Pardon? You want to realize? The captain realized the plane was stalled, so he's trying to push the control forward. First officer, for some reason or another, he was supposed to recover the airplane with it all the way back. And those two are not connected. They operate independently. So they were fighting one another. Nothing changed. The fact that the guy on the right pulled his back first meant that the captain on the left, pushing his forward, didn't do any good. They went all the way down into the ocean. Uses a control stick with a wheel on it. And no matter what happens, those two move together. So there's never any doubt what the position of that control wheel is in. If it's pulled all the way back on one side, it's going to be pulled all the way back on the other side. To me, that's an enormous safety feature that Boeing builds into all their airplanes. Some of the guys who fly the Airbus, I have a very good friend, Kevin Crowder, who's now up in Portland, Oregon. He flew the Airbus A320 for a long time. He really loved the idea of that side stick controller. Then he moved into the Boeing 777, and at first he was a little angry because he liked the side stick controller much better than the wheel. But then later on he realized that the wheel was a very, very significant safety factor, and he got so used to the 777 that he did not want to go back to the A320. So you can see, if you're going to ever fly, this is a 787, by the way, the latest and greatest of Boeing aircraft still has the stick and wheel. Okay, so the next thing compared between Boeing and Airbus is that Boeing has command of projections. Boeing has been making commercial aircraft. They have consistently proven they understand the market, that they are very, very good at forecasting where the market's going to be 10 to 20 years down the road. That's one of the reasons why they ignored the airlines who said, hey, you have to make an A380 to compete with Airbus. Boeing said, no, we're not going to make a A380. We're going to make a smaller aircraft with a lot of composites, great fuel efficiency, but better for the smaller aircraft marketplaces. And they did. So what happened? Today, there are no orders for the A380 version of the freighter, which is an indication of what's happening in the industry. There are airlines out there who have 380s that are coming off lease and they're not planning to renew the lease. The number of orders that they've accepted for the A380 have gone down. And it is likely, from what I gather from the aviation media, that the A380 is going to be shut off in terms of the production line. It hasn't yet. They're still making them because they have commitments that they made to certain airlines. But in the meantime, I'm sure that they're all very, very upset about the fact that it costs billions of dollars to manufacture such a brand new aircraft as that double-decker 380. Remember that the 380 is a double-decker, right? So why are the two manufacturers so close in number of lines? You know? Take a guess. Okay, here's the big deal with airlines, and the reason they're almost always close to one another, it's because when an airline has decided to expand their marketplace or to change their marketplace, they want an aircraft, and they want. And if it turned out that everybody wanted a Boeing aircraft, the airlines would have to wait 10 and 20 years to get an aircraft. Right now, Boeing's got a 10-year backlog of manufacturing all the models of their aircraft that they're currently manufacturing. 10 years. So the big reason why the two manufacturers are so close in numbers is because if you want a Boeing, you have to wait 10 years. If you want an Airbus, you might get it in 5 or 4 or 3. So the competition between the two means that even though Boeing would like to really dominate the marketplace, they can't, because they can't ramp up enough aircraft fast enough to be able to produce enough aircraft for people who want them. Okay, is there a winner among these competitors? No, not really. I think in many ways it's good to have competition in any industry. Now, this doesn't have to be really good competition. They call it a duopoly. Everybody knows what a monopoly is? It's one company dominating their market. Two aircraft companies. There really is no big winner, except that, again, Boeing has proven that they have command of the marketplace, that they understand the market, that they forecast for the market, they build airplanes for the coming market. You can't build an airplane for what you see today in the airline industry. You've got to build it for 5 to 10 years down the road, because that's how long it takes to design, build, test, get approval, and put it into airline service. Process. Okay, this article was sent to me by the man who heads up the Valley Regional Occupation Program. He wanted me to indicate to you that this is an article that just occurred recently, and I want you to pay note to the fact that just this aviation maintenance alone, young mechanics, this is a big one right here, young mechanics can quickly earn $72,000 a year. That's enormous difference from what it was even 10 years ago. If you graduated 10 years ago, any kind of training in aviation maintenance, you'd be hard-pressed to make $25,000 a year. But now, everybody has been pushing to get more and more mechanics. And you can be a mechanic in any phase of aviation. You don't necessarily have to work on engines. You can work on the interiors of aircraft. You can work on wing surfaces, on almost anything. But it's definitely a major industry to consider if you decide for whatever reason you want to get into aviation and be a pilot. Daniel, is that your hand? Pardon? Are there any what around here? Jobs? Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure that if you graduated with any kind of training in aviation maintenance, you could go to work right away at either Fresno Chandler, or you could go to work at Fresno Air Terminal. Absolutely. Because the airlines are grabbing them all up. And there aren't enough people out there. So pay attention to these career choices. Keep them in mind if you decide which way you want to go. So that's the end of our first presentation.